Hello everybody and welcome back to the third in the podcast series discussing Cox Automotive and Grant Thornton's 2023-2024 Insight Report. Again, I'm Philip Nothard, Insight Director here at Cox Automotive, and I'm joined by Owen Edwards, Head of Downstream Automotive at Grant Thornton.
Hi, good to be here.
In the third and final podcast series, we'll be looking at the new and used forecasts for the UK automotive sector, looking at 2024 and beyond. So Owen, in terms of the new and used forecasts, before we get on to the new and used forecasts themselves, let's talk about how we do it, why we do it, and some of the rationale behind doing the forecast.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of understanding how important historical benchmarks are and how crucial they are to forecasting in the automotive industry. You know, we've been through the most recent one with COVID and what that did to the new vehicle supply market and the impact on used vehicles. We've seen financial crashes in 2007, 2008, and that 7-year recovery from the financial crash. How do you look at yourself in terms of this historical benchmarking to consider future influences within the automotive sector?
Yeah, so what we'll do is we without a doubt, Phil, you're absolutely right. We'd look back at history. You know, we don't know what's coming up in the future, but we can only surmise, as they say. So what we would do is we'd look back, we'd look at the macro trends, the micro trends in the automotive. So macro, the bigger picture trends globally, micro trends in the automotive sector, and then take what's been seen historically, and then overlay that with changes in the economic factors, which we can forecast, and that would be the way we do it.
So I mean, you know, it's clear everything we do in terms of looking at future predictions, future forecasts, whether that's volume forecast, valuation forecast, new vehicle supply forecast, production forecasts, all have a relevance to historical influences and dynamics that have happened in the marketplace. And when we talk about influences impacting the automotive sector, you know, in other sections of the report we talk about, you know, the impact on the supply chain that came from COVID. So, you know, supply shortages in the 1 to tier 4 supply chain marketplace, the conflict in Ukraine and what that did to that supply chain, and the distribution impact from the conflict in the Ukraine. You know, so it's, in terms of the recovery, there are a lot of changes evolved of how we recover from some of these conflicts and the depth of the impact in the sector of these impacts.
Yeah, like you say, those major events that have taken place, they're key to how the market evolves and forms forward. As you said, we discussed it in the supply chain. We also discussed it in the dealer section as well. But the other thing that we need to think and cater for is the economics. So, you know, looking at interest rate rises, which is what we've got at the moment, you know, what does that do to people's disposable income? Where is GDP growth going, for example, which we know is highly correlated to new vehicle and used vehicle sales. So those are the other things that we sort of pick up, as well as the sort of content that you're talking about picking up as well.
And we know through the financial crash that government intervention helped that recovery. It helped the manufacturers, it helped the consumer, the support in that marketplace. So clearly, you know, recovery and growth in the automotive production is highly influenced by strategies that government make in terms of support and other market dynamics. But I mean, we talk about, you know, how crucial the sector is now, agile it is to adapt to ongoing changes. I mean, you know, we're talking in other sections about disruption in the retail space, how that's starting to change through agency, non-agency, omni-channel entry in the marketplace. We're talking the other section 2, about the transition to electrification, what that will look like, either that adoption of battery electric vehicles as a new or used vehicle. This all plays significant on future forecasts and the way the market evolves. You know, questioning, are we going to go back and how soon will we get back to a 90 million global production market for vehicles? You know, we've lost that. We're heading back in that kind of direction now.
Yeah, and I think what happens. So we've done some work on recessions and natural global disasters like you spoke about, or financial disasters like the 2007 global crash. Scenario there tends to be that level of underproduction as people shut down. These are just in time, as we discussed in the supply chain. They're just in time processes. It stops very quickly, but at the same time it comes back very quickly, and so when it comes back it tends to override where it was previously, so it bounces back strongly from a recession or from an economic weakness or a COVID type scenario. And I think that's where we're going to be, and we are starting to see now with the supply chain coming in. So we have to build that into our forecast as well. But we can take some of that from, as you said, the historical type scenarios and the macroeconomic factors that are out there.
So clearly, looking forward, it's in a rapidly changing era for the automotive sector. It's crucial to have that adaptability.
Correct.
It's crucial to be proactive towards these changes that are influencing in the sector, and to sort of help them thrive and succeed ahead of some of these changes that are happening in the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And the automotive sector has been one of those sectors that has continually bounced back. It continually evolves. We are as an industry very adaptable, both manufacturing, dealer, and anything in between. So there is that ability for the automotive sector to bounce back and continue to grow.
Right, Owen. So within the new and used forecast, let's talk about the new car market then in the UK. We talk about historical context to determine what the future landscape looks like, but let's look at the new car registrations in the UK and why we are forecasting the market as we are seeing it. We're looking at 2024 as to be a fairly stable, flat market after 2023. A lot of that is to do with the areas we discussed on the other sections, the transition to battery electric vehicles, the discussions around rules of origin, the ZEV mandate, EV transition. There is a lot going on around agency model and things like that. So 2024 is going to be a fairly disruptive market for both the OEMs and the retailers in the market. But one thing that I've always been very vocal about, when we start looking at UK market as a percentage share of global production, if you look at that between 2002 and 2019 as an average, the UK is less than 3% of global production. So when we talk about movement of deadlines for 2030 to 35 and things like that, in percentages wise, we're a fairly small player in the world of global new vehicle production.
Yeah, so historically, we've been around the 1.5, 1.6 million units, which is pretty robust, even in some cases higher. And basically, COVID and the shortage of supply has had quite a dramatic effect. And sort of this year, our thought process on 2023 production is about 1 million units. But we're no longer the massive powerhouse that we used to be. But we still got a very good, strong production process there that the UK brands should be proud of.
I mean, you look through time, and we're talking on the intro there about how external influences and how crucial it is to look at historical trends, historical benchmarks. You look at the 2007 financial crash. We look at the clear acceleration of production following that crash from 2009 onwards. That took I think 7 years till it peaked. Even before COVID, global production was on a downward trajectory from that extreme peak. We know that there was a lot of government support, a lot of cheap finance, acceleration from the manufacturers to throughput of volume, productivity was at its extreme height. The UK market was quite happy to take that product, cheap financing, PCP was on its height, 83-84% of new vehicles were on a PCP in the private market. So we were quite happy to take these vehicles on, but we're now in a different market landscape and we're not really potentially seeing any of them spikes as we go forward.
Yeah, so if we look at quite rightly, as you say, the cheap level of borrowing that we've had, which clearly made a massive impact on the PCP market. I mean, when you're talking that Bank of England interest rates were down as low as 0.25, 0.5, that says there's cheap borrowing, there's disposable income to be had. Now, the big question mark that we've got going forward, really for new vehicles, is that rise in interest rates having an impact on PCPs, et cetera, is that going to have an impact on, the movement of the market going forward? Yes, it's probably likely the case, but I think initially what we'll have is we'll still have a sort of a, as you said before, quite a flat 2024 market, and then after that we need to think about the market further.
So clearly what we're saying is that, the factors that are really shaping the new car registration market for the UK, particularly in 2024 and beyond possibly, is things like the ZEV mandate, the rules of origin, the, impact of GDP growth, inflation still higher than it should be, base rate finance still higher than we'd like it to be. I don't think anybody believes that we'll get back down to the 0.51% level, but base rates are still higher than we would like, alongside cost of living pressures and energy pressures and things like that. So I think you're right. I think there's a lot to take place in terms of 2024 and potentially beyond that.
Yeah, so as you say, 2024 broadly flat, then 2025, we'll be looking at about 2.2 million units registered in the UK, which is not, we're not back to by any means pre-COVID levels, which is 2.3. And then it will probably take, maybe a year or 2 years after that, 27, 28, to get to that 2.3, and then we classify that as a run-through average of both the cycle up and down on 2.3 million units.
Yeah, and I think we're right. I mean, in the report there, we talk about, as you say, we've said it a couple of times now, that 2024 fairly flat because of the influences.
Yeah, exactly.
We've seen the rise in 2023 on the back of the bounce back from COVID and the challenges faced in COVID. Then we might see a gradual increase again in 2025 and beyond. But when you start getting out to sort of 2028, it's very difficult to forecast out that far at the minute with everything going on. But we're not a natural in excess of a 2.3 million new car market, are we, in the UK?
No, not at all.
So remaining within the new used car forecasts, used cars, a key area of the market for retailers. We talk about the agency model, the transition to agency, and everything throughout that. We've been talking about crucial investment in used cars, potential diversification in used cars. So used cars is a key area for retailers as we move forward. And I mean, when we talk about averages, we talk about historics and putting context behind our forecast and why we believe where the forecast will go in 2024 and beyond. We need to say that that the UK averaged 7.4 million used car transactions, which is change of ownership tracked as a proxy through the DVLA between 2002 and 2019. So we aren't naturally an 8 million used car transactional marketplace when you start looking at those pre-pandemic averages for that period. We saw the peaks, similar as we saw the peaks in new car registrations as we came out of the financial crash, cheap money, cheap lending, government incentives, cheap financing, and we saw that accelerate. Where is this market starting to head? Where is the used car market? We're talking 2024 and beyond in terms of volumes.
Yes, I think we need to look back at what's happening with the new car market, and those new car market forecasts are there, so I don't want to touch on them. But what I would say is, as we've said before, when we're talking about the dealer aspect and the used cars and the dealer aspect, there is this level of reflection from the new car market to the used car market. So what comes through the new car market goes into the used car market. So as that new car market starts to grow, that will self-perpetuate the used car market. And so consequently, there's two factors that will happen there. The first one is it will continue to grow on the back of the part exchanges coming through. And then on the back of that, the structural aging profile will change in the market as well. So i.e. where we saw an increase in 5 to 7, and not 0 to 3, we might now start to see some more 0 to 3s come through. And then there'll be a section where those 0 to 3 several years ago, when we had COVID, are now related to 3 to 5. So you'll start to see a dynamic aging process take place across that as well.
And that's it. In the new car forecast and the opening production, we talked about the loss of production, the impact in terms of used vehicle supply. But part of that is battery electric vehicles as well. As we've got fewer vehicles produced of those fewer vehicles produced, we've got a higher proportion of battery electric vehicles by default, gives a fewer share of ICE vehicles coming into the used vehicle marketplace. So not only going into the future, we've got fewer used cars coming back in as used cars into the used vehicle park. We've got fewer combustion engine vehicles coming in as part of that share as well. So it's crucial that the retailers start to think about the used battery electric vehicle market as a key source of product, and it's crucial towards the performance of that 2024 and beyond transactional volume.
Exactly, and I think you're absolutely right, because again, you know, you're going to have an aging profile for used EVs. You know, you're not going to get any used EVs out in 10 and 15 years. You're going to get them all at the sort of you know, at the commensurate of 0 to say 3 to 5. So you've got that structure to consider as well. So not only have you got a battery electric vehicle that you need to be doing something with and understanding how that works and whether there's any support for it, question mark or not, we don't know, and we haven't built that into our considerations. But secondly, you know, you've got to sit that structuration that the aging profile is very much more in a very narrow band, 0 to 3, 0 to 5.
And as we close out 2023 and move into 2024, we've moved away from a pull new car marketplace into a push marketplace, which many predicted we would do that. Alongside of that, you've then got lots of incentives, lots of support, lots of initiatives, lots of subvented finance coming into the market from the manufacturer to help push that activity in the new vehicle marketplace and in the adoption to battery electric vehicles, which is actually starting to put further pressure on the used vehicle market, because the used vehicle market are then competing against a very low, heavily supported new car, subvented finance, etc., as a used car.
Correct. No, you're absolutely right on that aspect. I mean, you know, the more the new car market is supported, then the more supposedly the volumes will come through, as we know. So the situation therefore is that you will start to see that sourcing, which is what we've spoken about in our dealer section, you know, around used cars. It's all about sourcing of the car. Where do I get the car from? And therefore, if that source is coming through, whether it be battery electric vehicle, which a large proportion will now start to be after a 3-year rotation, as we do on leases, for example, or PCPs, then we will start to see the used car market start to grow again.
So, I mean, really looking at 2024 and beyond long term, there's a lot to get through yet in terms of used vehicles. That's influenced purely by production volumes in the global space. That production volume is then influenced by all the legislation and regulations and tariffs that are playing out in that new vehicle place. That then determines what vehicles will be coming to the UK or not come to the UK, and which manufacturers will be bringing those vehicles into the UK or not, which then plays into that used vehicle marketplace. So again, the complexity around what the future used vehicle marketplace gets even more complex because of what's playing out in the new vehicle production market and new vehicle registration place.
Yeah, it is one of those markets that is naturally a very complex market anyway, you know, and what I would say on the back of that, it's very difficult to predict. We have done the predictions for 2024, but taking it further out, you know, we would sort of see back to the pre-COVID levels, 7.9 around there, 7.8, 7.9, sort of coming back somewhere around the 2028 type scenario.
Yeah, so we agree that there is that recovery. We expect it to start to recover, but it's going to be more 2025 out to 2028 before we get back to what people might say in terms of pure volume, a more normalised pre-COVID volume marketplace. Well, again, Owen, I think it's more and more difficult to predict what the future looks like, particularly in the new and used vehicle market. We certainly have to get our crystal ball out, however foggy that crystal ball might have been to look forward. But thanks for spending the time to chat through that with me today.
Not at all.
So as with the other ones, you know, thanks for watching the last in the 3 series of podcasts. Again, you can check out further details and all the details around the new and used vehicle forecasts and production forecasts at the Cox Automotive Insight Report website. And again, thanks for listening, thanks for tuning in, and hope you found it insightful and interesting.